Thank you everyone for joining our webinar today. My name is Nevin DiParlo. I am our Senior Sales Manager at Sofar Ocean. And I am glad to be joined today by Philippe Jean, who is the Engineering Manager at Ocergy. For those of you that are not familiar with Ocergy, Ocergy provides sustainable solutions for the floating offshore wind sector. They collect critical metocean data to support their operations and projects using the Sofar Spotter platform. Philippe is very experienced with the spotter, and he's also an expert in the world of floating offshore wind. And he's going to talk a little bit today about Ocergy, their solutions, and also more specifically how they're using the spotter to support their projects and operations offshore. So without further ado, I'll pass it off to Philippe, who will take over with his slides. And during his presentation, if you could just submit questions to the chat box, we will get to them at the end during a dedicated Q&A session. And we will be keeping track of them as well throughout, and we will be sure that they are addressed at the end of the presentation. Thank you very much. And without further ado, Philippe, please take it away.
Hi everyone, thank you, Nevin. Can you hear me well? Yes. So my name is Philippe Jean. I work since 2 years on this project of OCG data buoy. OCG data buoy is being developed to provide information for the offshore wind developers, mainly to collect data on wind, waves, currents, and the quality of water, and at the same time to collect data on birds and fish. This kind of data is used by our clients to prepare their development, to assess the possibility of developing wind farms, and from the finance point of view as well as from the environmental point of view. One of the main advantages of this platform is that it is going to collect data over a long period of time, 24 hours a day, and it is collecting multiple information from the same buoy, storing all the data on the same computer and transmitting the data through Starlink to a server onshore, which means it reduces the cost for this kind of data collection campaigns, which are usually done by boat, especially for observing the birds and the fish. So it is going to provide multiple data in a more efficient way. It's also going to allow you to have the same time for all your data, meaning that at a specific date and time, you can have waves, wind, videos of birds, radars, and you can make cross analysis from all this with all these parameters together. So on this pictures, you can see the platform from above. It's roughly 24 meters overall in diameter, but in reality, the structure itself is quite small. The columns are 1 meter in diameter, which means it's capable of filtering most of the waves, and the platform is very stable. It's almost not moving in the waves, which improves a lot the quality of the videos that we make and the quality of the radar images that we take. And this second picture is a nicer picture from our friends of Sofar, where we see the buoy, which has been performing amazingly, I must say. Every day, every minute, it's always transmitting its data. It's very accurate, and it's a nice picture because it's showing a wave, a very small one, but still showing the main purpose for us on this platform is to collect the wave data next to our bigger platform. But I will talk more about that later. We are located in Mediterranean Sea, so here, somewhere in the south of France, next to the border with Spain. We are quite remote. It's 30 kilometers off the coast. So it takes roughly 3 hours to go there by boat if you want to access the platform. And it's producing its energy by solar panels and wind turbines, totally environmentally uh, autonomous, I would say. There is no diesel, no other source of power on board, which means we are doing some power management. So whenever there is plenty of sun, we can operate all our instruments. When there is less sun or wind, we just prioritize what is being kept alive. Just quick explanation about how this kind of platform is assembled. So it's brought by trucks to the location where it has to be deployed. And then you erect the columns vertically with small cranes, bolt them together. It's a 2 days job, roughly. And then you insert the computers inside the buoy. So these are little baskets which contains servers and batteries and computers in general, I would say. This kind of baskets are prepared in advance, so we can test most of the equipment, and then it's inserted in the central part of the buoy to be protected from the sea. Then we use a bigger crane to lift the buoy and moor it to the quayside, make some tests, and then we tow it to the sea where it will be installed. So for that, we use what's called a multicat, small 20-meter boat with a small crane to install the anchor. You can see here that the platform is roughly immersed halfway compared to the picture I showed before on the quay. So this is roughly 5 meters above the sea and 5 meters below the sea. Above the sea is a radar to measure the presence of birds roughly 2 kilometers around the platform, a LiDAR to measure the wind profile from 40 meters above sea up to 200 meters above sea, where most of the big wind turbines hubs are located. We also have pressure, temperature, humidity sensor, of course, and lots of cameras to analyze the altitude of flights of the birds. And we do have similar instruments underwater, except the radar is replaced by a sonar. And yeah, hydrophones are used to listen to marine mammals. You can access the platform with small boats, even with a sailboat. It's easy to board using this ladder here. And you can walk on the walkways. It's very safe. You can access the different instruments to maintain them. And you can make pretty pictures, of course, using drones. It's quite a nice area there. We are using Sofar as a kind of geofence. So one of the very nice things you can have on the spotter is the ability to monitor the position of the Sofar buoy on a map. So in case anything wrong happens with the mooring of the buoy and would be dragged away, we would be alerted by email. This is really, very useful. We also get every 30 minutes new data on the wave heights, wind speeds. And we have a kind of webcam interface where we see what's happening underwater, on the walkways above, where we can check the wind turbines are running, the instruments are okay. Our computer sends some kind of reporting every day where we collect all the data into several graphs. So wind speeds on the buoy, above the buoy up to a few hundred meters above the buoy, the directions of the wind, direction of the waves, direction of the buoy, the heading of the buoy, because it's just anchored using one line, so it will align with the wind, the wave heights, peaks, and mean periods as a function of time of the day, the motion of the buoy, which we are recording using a 6DoF sensor, um, the rotation of the buoy, which you can see here, for example, they are very, very small, typically 1 degree standard deviation, which is really small for 2 meter waves, which means the platform is extremely horizontal, which is a very good thing to make some recording of radar. Of course, it's different from a cake buoy or a small spherical buoy that would more be pitching a bit more with the waves, probably up to 5 or 10 times more. So this is really one big advantage of this architecture. We've got information on the energy produced, the level of batteries, and which instrument is running, which is not. Same thing for what's happening underwater, where we listen to the sounds around the buoy and the sounds inside the buoy. The objective is to count the number of marine mammals that are coming towards the buoy to determine whether the structure is attractive or repulsive towards the marine mammals. We also have some artificial baskets, which creates some shelters for small invertebrates and fishes. So within a year already, we could see life blooming around these structures, and we have the videos every day. So we can use AI to count the fish and identify the species. This is the kind of life that we've seen, the biggest one and the smallest one, and some urchin as well. It's really attracting lots of life, some small fishes that are typically going to rotate around the columns in case some predators are coming, some moonfish, some sharks. I don't know how to say dorade in English, sorry. This is the kind of fish that we observe. It's also a scientific lab in the sense that we bring the scientists to the platform every month, more or less, when the weather is okay, and they dive and they come to make some counter checks. They will count the fish by hands, make some pictures, take some measurements, take back home one of these cages to identify the species. So by that, they can make correlation between the records that are made on the buoy and what they really see. And if you want to see more, just go on our website. You will see videos. And so I'm not keeping the time. I'm sorry, Nevin. If you think it's too slow, just tell
No,
me.
it's great. Please continue.
So that was about our platform in general. I would just say that Ocergy is also designing and soon building much bigger platforms to accommodate the big wind turbines. So we are very interested on our side as well as our clients. We are interested in understanding the loading on this kind of platforms. So the wind force, of course, the wave force. So it's one of the reasons why we purchased a spotter. When you develop big wind farms offshore, you will obviously need some information about what's happening there in terms of marine life, above sea, below sea, that I already spoke about, but you also need to understand the structural loading on your platforms, especially the extremes and the fatigue. So extreme, you will have to record the biggest waves that you've seen over a certain period, make some statistics to estimate what are the biggest wave in 20 years or 25 years. In terms of fatigue, fatigue is the cycling of steel structures. You need to understand what is the period of the wave and the height of the wave in a kind of time series in time, like all the time. So you can apply that to your models and estimate how much time it will take until the structure could fail, especially the weldings. So both of this is really important, and for that you need to record the wind, the waves, and the currents. This is typically what we see when the storms are coming. So as I explained before, although the camera is moving a lot, I apologize for that. The buoy itself is not pitching too much, as you can see from the horizon here. So that was just to show a little bit how it looks. At the same time, on the same day, we can get the wave height and periods from the spotter. We can get the position of the buoy. And this is, for example, over a 6 months period. We could identify that the buoy stays within roughly 200 meters from its anchor, which is really useful in terms of analyzing our design. We can make the same kind of calculation in our softwares for mooring analysis. We will model the chain, the buoy, and we will input the time series of waves and wind into the model and check that roughly we've been able to predict how far the buoy has been moving. That is really a very good uh, design check. So this is what Sofar is providing to us. So the spotter records the wave height. So you can see it takes statistics every 30 minutes and tells you roughly what's called the significant wave height. So it's more or less the height of the waves that you see with your eyes when you look at the sea, just to make it simple. So we've been up to 3.6 meter waves. It's quite big for Mediterranean Sea, small for the Pacific, but big for Mediterranean Sea. And then you can transform that into some more typical diagrams that are used by the industry, like wave height as a function of periods. Usually it fits into a kind of triangle where on the top here is the limit that you cannot really exceed because the wave will break. And on the right here is like the dispersion that you get on the period for a given height. So you can see a tendency in the Mediterranean Sea here. It looks like the waves you will get increase in period as the wave height is increasing. That's classical, but each location in the world will have its own kind of shape. You can, if you look at the direction that the spotter is recording, you can identify the main regimes of waves in this area, which is really interesting. Most of the time we get waves from the northwest, which is a big wind called tramontane, which is blowing from the west along the Pyrenees and expanding into the Mediterranean Sea. It's very, very selective, as you can see. It's always for a couple of days blowing in the same direction. And sometimes you get like the opposite, which is called marin. It's a wind coming from Africa and it's a bit more spread out, but it can bring some big waves because the fetch is a bit longer. So these are very useful. You can also make some plots of the wave height against the wind. That's an interesting plot to understand how the waves are building up. So like when the wind is coming from the coast, there is a small fetch of a few, I would say 20 kilometers. And then the wind and the waves are very much correlated. The wave periods are around 6 seconds, and you can see more or less that the wind speed increase, the waves increase, they follow each other really, really very well. And sometimes there is no correlation between the wave height and the wind speed, and that is probably the opposite when the wind is coming from the south and it's further away, building up bigger swells that are totally not related to the local conditions. So from that, of course, you can build some typical reports on metocean conditions, on what is expected in terms of direction of waves with respect to wind. It's important for design because sometimes the the worst condition for a platform is when the wind and waves are aligned, but sometimes it's even worse if they are not aligned. So this is really key here, what we are being able to record wind and waves at the same time is very important. Our LiDAR is sending a kind of laser that's bouncing on the particles in the air, and from the information that you collect, you can calculate the wind speeds, and you get profiles of wind up to 250 meters with the average, the max, the mean. And this kind of data is used, of course, to estimate the power that can be produced by big wind turbines. If you want to estimate the operational revenues that you would get from a wind farms, and also the shape of the profile will tell you a bit more about how the wings of the wind turbine will be loaded, and the turbulence, which is really the difference between the maximum and the minimum wind speed, is also very useful for us to estimate the dynamic loads on the wind turbines. And we've been collecting lots of data on this turbulence, which is one of the key parameters nowadays to reduce the cost of the wind turbines offshore. Another opportunity here for us to use the spotter is to use the wind data from the spotter. So I'm not at all an expert on this, but I understood that the wind speed provided by the spotter is been calibrated empirically based on the analysis of the motion of the buoy. And what we see is, if we compare, the green here is the wind speed provided by the spotter, and the pink is from the anemometer on the buoy. It's a sonic anemometer, and the red, yes, sorry, that's the 60-meter wind speed, the red measured by the LiDAR. So we've got a big profile of wind on the surface of the sea, wind 10 meters above the sea, and wind at 60 meters above the sea on the same graph. We can see all of them are following quite the same pattern, which is good. We see a little lag in time for the measure of the spotter, and that is maybe not surprising. It could be that the spotter is based on the waves. If I understood correctly, the wind speed of the spotter is in fact based on the high frequency part of the motion of the spotter. So it's kind of the wind that you can estimate from the high frequency part of the wave spectrum, which might, how can I explain that? Maybe this is too detailed. I should keep that for later. But there is some interesting thing about the lag here between the two. Other things that we can use from the spotter are the information about temperature of the sea, the pressure, and our scientists, they have instruments to measure the chlorophylls, the salinity, and the oxygen content, and they are very much interested in the correlation between these parameters and all the parameters provided by the spotter. So it's very useful as well. This slide is about the detection of fishes. We use a sonar, which is trying to capture the presence of fish around the structure of the buoy. And when the waves are higher than 1 meter, some air bubbles are injected in the first layer of water, and these air bubbles tend to create some reflections for the signal sent by the sonar. And that you can see on this small video here. You can see coming from top corner down here. That's not fishes, it's really waves propagating on the buoy. So the people who are working with us on the sonar, they are starting to develop some specific analysis thresholds depending on the wave height to improve the quality of the pictures. So what I want to share here is that by having the spotter next to the buoy, it's possible for us to improve the quality of the images that we make with our sonar. So it's possible to go through all the records of the spotter and check the days where the height of the waves is smaller than 1 meter, for example. And then we know that the quality of the image will be good. And for higher than 1 meter, between 1 and 2, maybe we'll change a little bit some parameters on the sonar to be able to improve to filter out the the reflection from the air bubbles I mentioned before. So this is the kind of image that we can get. You can see the columns of the buoy, and this big cloud is in fact a huge uh, school of fish running around some of the columns. So our scientists are working on making a relation between the quantity of fishes and the intensity and size of pictures that we get, so that they can make quantitative criteria on how many fishes are coming and when they are coming. And last, I would like to speak about a bit more design. So this is the kind of tool that we use to design our buoy. It's called OrcaFlex. It's capable of running some simulation with waves, wind, current, the mooring lines, and all the structures. It will calculate the loads for you, and it will also calculate the motions. So as we are recording with the spotter the wave heights, as we are recording the motion of the buoy with some 6DOF, we can make very nice comparisons, which are very valuable for people who are designing offshore platforms. There is still lots of things to be learned on these topics. So this is the kind of graph that we get. The blue curve is coming from Spotter. It's a full day of recording on May, 22 of May. So the wave were going down from 2 meter to roughly 1 meter on that day. At the same time, you can see the acceleration in the horizontal and vertical direction that are big at the beginning and smaller at the end of the day. So that's because the motion of the buoy is proportional to the wave height. Bigger the wave, the more motions you get. So from this, it's possible to make very intense analysis like transfer functions. And so to be able to understand how the platform moves when the waves are hitting the platform. But a simpler graph that you can make is just to plot the wave heights, significant wave height, against the standard deviation of the acceleration. And you can see a nice linear fit, which is really as you expect. And you can compare to what you get from simulations. So for instance, here on the tool I was showing before, I inserted the wave height of 1.5 meter, and I get the standard deviation roughly close to what has been measured. That's really a good confirmation for us. We can do the same for the vertical acceleration and see a bit more difference here. So that's an indication for us that our tool is overestimating the motion and that maybe there is more damping than we think. Maybe we should tune a little bit our coefficients. So also it's a good learning for us. And this is the same graph, but for the pitch motion of the platform. So nose down, nose up. It's quite good correlation. So it means for a 2 meter wave, you get a bit less than 1 degree RMS, which is really small, as I explained before. That's it. I hope I cannot see any of you, so I cannot tell if you are sleeping or not. I hope it was interesting. Always nice to share.
No, that's that's great. Thank you so much, Philippe. That was very interesting. And with that, if anyone has questions, this is a great time to add them into the chat window. I see that there are a few, and I can kick things off. And I will ask the questions on your behalf. So again, please just add them to the chat if you're curious. First question that we have from Philippe. How often do you provide maintenance to the spotter? How are you dealing with biofouling?
So far, no maintenance. So 1 year of service without anything. Really,
Got it.
we've
Have
been
you
there
noticed any
to
biofouling?
not really.
Got it. Really interesting. Is it a region where there is limited biofouling, and that's something that you guys were aware of before deployment?
There is a little bit on the buoy. I would say less than half a centimeter after 1 year,
Got it.
but it's been concentrating quite a lot on our platform, on the cages that we put, which are really they are called biohuts, and they are really there to attract the marine life.
Got it. Okay, understood. Yeah, I would just say in general, for anyone who's curious, maintenance cycles largely are dictated by the region in which you're deploying the spotter. So, some places require maintenance on a much more frequent basis, every 8 weeks, maybe even, or potentially even more frequently than that to ensure that the buoy stays clean and is operating in the state that it needs to be to provide high quality data. So, that's something that you can always work with us on if you have questions. Another question that we had come in is, I think you mentioned this already, Philippe, and also you said that you haven't really had to provide any maintenance, but has the spotter and the quality of the data been reliable and really shown to be durable throughout all of the different seasons, and severe weather events?
Yes, the only thing is really maybe depending on us. We've been using a mooring line which is attached to our buoy.
Right.
It could have been better, but we are in 100 meters of water, so it was quite expensive to make a dedicated mooring for the spotter. So what happens is when the waves are quite big, there is a point where our mooring line gets a bit straight, and we probably, most probably, make some truncation on the motion of the buoy, which means the measurements are not as accurate for the big wave heights, but it's very difficult to tell how much we're inaccurate. But we are aware of this, and this is a very experimental setup that we did. So next time we could do better. I guess the best would be to have an intermediate buoy, a chain, another intermediate buoy, another chain. So I would say we don't have another mean of measurement, so I cannot tell about accuracy really. It's difficult to make comparison if I don't have another instrument to.
Yep.
So sorry if it's not so.
No, that's helpful. Thank you. And then one other question, I think this just in general, related to the operations of spotters for supporting the offshore wind industry. Given that metocean conditions can vary greatly throughout a large offshore wind site or lease area, is it possible to deploy multiple spotter platforms at one location? Like, would there be advantages to having data coming from different parts of one lease area as projects are being developed, given that the spotter is smaller and lower cost compared to alternatives?
Sure, yes, that would be very interesting for waves and for wind as well. Could be a. um, it's very important also to understand the variability of the wind across the wind farm. So even though the spotter wind measurement is not as accurate, of course, as the LiDAR, I think it would be really, if we could demonstrate a bit more that the wind measurement on the spotter is still quite good enough, it would also provide some very useful information.
Got
So
it.
I would say yes for the cost of the spotter. It's very efficient in terms of cost, clearly. It would make a lot of sense to put at least four of them if you have a typical rectangular site, and put an OCG data in the center, and from that get an estimate of the variability, and you could take a decision to move the OCG data to another location, for example, after 1 year of measurement. If you see that you want to understand a bit more precisely, say you've guessed an area to put the OCG data, you made the profile, but somehow the spotter 10 kilometers or 5 kilometers away seems to give higher mean wind speed. Could make sense to move the OCG data for the second year to the other area. I mean, of course, plenty of things to discuss, but I can see it could be really useful, yes.
Great. This next question, I'm not fully sure I understand, so maybe the participant who asked it could clarify, but we can give it a shot. So someone asks, what is the steel weight of the spotter and estimate for a platform to support a 15 megawatt wind turbine? So I don't fully understand that question, but just to clarify, the spotter is actually attached to the Ocergy buoy or data buoy itself. So it's not on a dedicated mooring line, if that was what the question was looking for. But feel free to clarify in the chat if that does not answer the question. One other question that's come in too, Philippe, is what or how is Ocergy transmitting the data from the spotter, given the fact that it's pretty far offshore? Are you sending it over satellite? Has that proven to be reliable?
Yes. So I will just say for the question before, maybe our platform is 40 tons, and a platform to carry a big wind turbine would be 1,500 tons. So it's another scale. And we are transmitting data through Starlink. You can see Starlink dish here and here. Do you still see the picture, by the way?
Yep, we
Yeah.
can see.
So we have two dishes, but to be honest, it's so reliable. We just use one, and we get typically 2 terabytes of data a month, which is more than what we would dream. Initially, we thought we would go by boat to collect our data, but the flow rate of data is so high on Starlink that we can just export everything every day. So except from the hydrophones, which are so much heavy in terms of data that we just send 3 hours of hydrophones instead of the 24-hour. But yeah, Starlink is reliable, it works perfectly.
Got it. And then on the spotter side of things, you're using just Iridium, correct? Because
Yes,
yeah,
Spotter is, you can explain much better than me, but Spotter is sending small files by Iridium.
yeah,
So I guess on Spotter, we talk about a few kilooctets of data every 30 minutes. On our side, we are sending, as I said, roughly 2 terabytes of data a month. So gigabytes of data a day.
yeah.
But it's a totally different application, really. We are not, it's perfectly adapted to use Iridium on the spotter. And for us, it would make no sense because we would have to pay so much to export anything that. So we took the Starlink route.
Makes sense. Um, and then one last question for you too. I think we still have a fair number of folks who are in attendance. Um, out of curiosity, Philippe, for supporting the offshore wind industry and maybe particular floating offshore wind as it continues to develop, what features or capabilities would you want to see added to the spotter buoy itself, to better support the industry and your operations and projects?
Hmm, interesting. I would encourage you to develop a mooring system, which requires a couple of months of Orcaflex work from a hydrodynamic guy. I think you could probably provide some mooring system for different depths and different extreme wave heights. That would be really useful. So what we expect from that is a description of the mooring and the guarantee that the performance of the spotter is unaffected by the mooring up to so much height of wave. That would be a really useful thing to because we don't know for the extremes. For the design, it's important to be able to measure waves of in some place in the world of 10, 15 meters. So if you want to address the big spots for the offshore wind, like Scotland or Ireland or even the States, you will be facing very big waves, and for that you cannot afford that the spotter is diving into the waves. It has to follow the wave. So that, I mean, we can do it, but it would be, I think, much more, um, would be better that you say what should be used so that everyone using spotters would use the same kind of moorings and would rely on the kind of publication that says we've been testing this mooring, it's working. So that would be the basic thing to do, because we talk about measurements of waves.
Yeah. And how about other
Uh,
sensors on board too? Would there be use in having other
yes,
sensors on the spotter or below the surface,
sure. I would
data?
say hydrophones are useful. Um, CTD, so chlorine, oxygen, temperature. These are small sensors that are not using too much power. Some of our scientists are also using what's called VR2 in French. I don't know in English, but it's a sensor that is basically listening to the tags. So some fishes have been captured, and scientists have put tags in their body. And when the fish is coming close to the VR2 sensor, it's counting it. So that kind of sensor is really useful, because if you have many, many spotters, you will be able to track fishes. And if you collect all the data, you will be able to say this fish has been moving from here to here and back here. This is the kind of data that people are really interesting to get. And these sensors are low power consumption, which is, I guess, I mean, the big difference between OCG data and Spotter, apart from the size, is that we can afford to run roughly 1.5 kilowatt power a day. I think the Spotter is probably just 20 watts, or I don't know, 10 watts.
Yeah, well, with the smart mooring platform, we do have the ability to provide power to some, as you mentioned, low power sensors below the surface, like temperature or pressure. We actually are adding a current meter that's going to be available in the first quarter of this year, which is, of course, useful for offshore
Yes,
wind.
current,
Um,
yes, of course.
and yeah, we're interested in looking at a number of different parameters below the surface too. So it's always really helpful to get that type of input. And I encourage anyone who's joining this webinar too to let us know what they're interested in. And we always provide that feedback to our product and engineering team. Um, so this has been incredibly interesting, Philippe. I don't have any other questions for you, and it looks like most of the questions have been answered. Actually, it looks like we have one more that's coming. I guess we can use this as a buzzer beater. Um, has the possibility to measure waves from the platform been considered? For example, using altimeters mounted on the legs of the platform or pressure gauges. This could maybe bring some redundancy to validate the spotter buoy data.
Yes, indeed. So that has been considered, and our buoy is been paid by us. It's been on our own finance, and we could not afford the radar. But there are two companies selling wave radars in Europe, and they are very well calibrated. And so the idea is that when we will have our first commercial project, we will put the wave radar on the on the buoy, and that could be an opportunity then to increase the separation between the spotter and the buoy, so that we explore a little bit what Nevin was mentioning, that we get wave conditions at two different points. And so yes, we typically have the possibility to attach the wave radar here on what we call the lookout platform at the top here, and it's three beams, um, probably ultrasonic, I think. And then from this, you can get the height, the directions, and periods Yes, but it's costing roughly $40,000. So it's uh, it's like a multiple of spotter price.
Yeah,
But if you are in a commercial project for Exxon, Total, or big companies like that, of course you would invest in this kind of tools.
makes sense. Well, Philippe, thank you so much for participating today. It was really interesting to learn about what you and your team has been up to, how you're using the spotter to support your operations. For anyone who's joining, we will feel free to reach out to me directly. My information will be provided in a follow-up email along with the recording. If you have questions or if you'd like to connect with Philippe after the fact, we can certainly put you in touch. So thank you for joining. I hope everyone has a great week. And yeah, we will make the recording available and follow-up questions will be sent out after the fact.
Thanks, Nevin. Thanks,
Thanks,
everyone.
everyone.
Bye bye.
Bye.
Have a great week. Bye bye.